What if humanity was not the beginning of history, but just a distant echo? We believe we are the first, but what if we were just remnants of something bigger? This thought is disturbing because it challenges our vanity as pioneers. The silence of the earth is not absence, it is like pages torn from a book, and each missing page may hide a truth we cannot bear. The paradox is clear. We look for life on other planets, but ignore Earth itself. Perhaps what we seek in the distant stars was once here. The controversy arises because we accept meteors and dinosaurs, but not civilizations. Why would it be absurd to imagine that we were not the first inhabitants? After all, it wouldn't be the first time Earth has rebooted its own storyline. Curiosity grows when we think about the marks we will leave. Plastic, concrete, and radiation can outlast our empires. If a distant future finds us, it will be through these scars. But what if the same thing has happened before, in forgotten cycles? The reward is clear. Whoever dares to ask can change everything we believe. Imagine time as oceans stacked up, not as years on a calendar. On the geological horizon, cities turn to dust faster than it seems. Monuments, bridges, and steel give in to sea spray, tectonics, and entropy. Deep time is a patient, efficient, almost merciless eraser. Entire civilizations are written in pencil on a living slate. Nature turns to rubber in cycles of rain, heat, and ice. Each human century is a sigh within unwitnessed ages. What we call eternal is just the stubbornness of our ego. The planet rewrites its surface like a palimpsest manuscript. Where there were once clear letters, today there are shadows and diffuse traces. And right in that silence, the most frightening questions begin. To get a sense of scale, think of a library with 4 million books. You search for a single needle hidden on only one possible page. It is not enough to open volumes at random. It is precision against the immensity. This is the ratio between cultural remains and actual geological time. Civilizations can flourish, mature, and fade into footnotes. The rock record overlaps layers, ink writing over ink. Silence, therefore, is not emptiness. It is an excess of overlapping pages. Searching for evidence requires humility, method, and almost monastic patience. The common mistake is to confuse absence of evidence with evidence of absence. Amidst the noises of Earth, some signals survive as stubborn whispers, and these whispers push us to the next step of the search. Bring this closer. Losing a hard drive with photos, diaries, and projects. In seconds, a decade becomes silence, as if it never existed. The pain is not only from what disappears, but from what we will no longer know. The same thing happens with Earth. Libraries become gaps in the record. Still, some clues remain like crumbs along the way. Strange minerals, anomalous layers, mismatched signatures. They are discrete marks, similar to the smell that lingers in a room. A forgotten perfume reveals who was there, even without portraits. On the planet, industrial waste would play the role of this ancient perfume. If we learn to sniff them out, perhaps we can decipher buried stories. Let's open this room and talk about invisible traces, line by line. When we imagine lost civilizations, we immediately think of colossal monuments. Buried pyramids, fossilized skyscrapers, statues that defy eras. However, what actually survives millions of years is much more subtle. Instead of towers, look for chemical signatures hidden in the rock record. Unlikely metal alloys, strange isotopic ratios, non-standard minerals, anomalous layers of sediment, industrial ash, microspheres of thermal origin. They are tiny notes that the past may have left silent. Almost invisible to the naked eye, they require method, patience, and comparison. The trick is to ask, does this match known natural processes? If it doesn't match, it's worth looking twice, 3 times, 4 times, because the extraordinary disguises itself above all as absolute normality. Look at us. Plastic has already become a global layer, compacted like rock. In future strata, it may appear as a sedimentary technoform, Nuclear waste will leave measurable radioactive fingerprints and isotopic daughters. Cement, steel, and tempered glass generate unnatural mineral grains and phases. Burning fossil fuels alters carbon signatures on a large scale. Ash from power plants spreads glassy spherules across ancient basins and deltas. Even synthetic fertilizers change the nitrogen ratio in buried soils. All of this works like a perfume that lingers in the empty room. We don't see the person, but we feel like someone was there recently. Industrial remains do the same for civilizations of yesterday and before. The smell remains, the presence does not, and that is what we need to sniff out. Have you ever walked into a room and recognized someone just by the scent they left behind? There were no photos, no objects, just a subtle hint in the air. Investigating ancient civilizations requires this same kind of trained sensitivity. First be surprised, then measure, compare, and try to refute vigorously. Look for micrometric metallic spheres, rare polymorphs, textures that demand explanation. Check isotopic ratios, traces of halogens, mismatched thermal patterns. If the natural hypothesis fails repeatedly, the story changes gears. Still, deep time erases almost everything with cold and heat. Some signs disappear, others persist, depending on the environment and chance. It's time to ask what nature destroys and what it preserves, because that's where the hunt leaves the subtle and finds the possible. Nature is, at the same time, guardian and executioner of the planet's memory. Glaciations drag rocks as if they were fragile toys, erasing marks. Erosion erodes entire mountains, leaving nothing but dust and silence. Volcanoes explode and cover entire cities under choking ash and burning lava. Earthquakes tear apart the ground and rearrange centuries in relentless minutes. The sea advances, swallows coasts, and takes with it what seemed eternal. Forests grow, tear down ruins and turn temples into covered stones. Even the subtle wind slowly wears away columns, sculptures, and ancient inscriptions. It's as if the earth itself were a harsh editor, cutting out sections of his work. She writes, tears, rewrites, and never asks our permission to change. Therefore, understanding what disappears is as important as looking for what remains. But not everything is swallowed up by nature's merciless oblivion. There are pockets where time seems suspended, keeping secrets. In deep lakes, the absence of oxygen preserves delicate artifacts. In ice, entire bodies remain intact for thousands of years. In the dry desert, fabrics and parchments hold up almost as well as they did in the day. Even caves act as vaults, protecting pigments and tools. It's curious to think, the more hostile the environment, the more it preserves. Hostility drives away life, but it also prevents everything from degrading. That's why we find mummies, scrolls, cave paintings in hiding places. They are unlikely safes, chosen by chance, and not by human intention. And perhaps it is in these vaults that invisible clues still await discovery. We have all experienced something similar on an intimate and personal scale. Opening an old box in the attic may reveal forgotten photos. A letter kept in a drawer reveals feelings that seemed erased. A dusty toy awakens decades-old memories in seconds. These little miracles show us that time does not erase everything. Sometimes, all it takes is the right condition for the memory to remain intact. The planet does the same, only on infinitely larger scales. He decides with care what goes and what stays. And if even a childhood note can change our memory, imagine fossils, or even imagine lost artifacts that have luckily survived the ages. This leads us to wonder, how does Earth keep its secret diary in layers? The planet writes its own history on pages that are not made of paper. Each layer of sediment is a sentence recorded in the deep book of the Earth. Sand, clay, volcanic ash, fossils, everything becomes words in this secret diary. But unlike an organized book, these pages are not always linear. They are often blurred by erosion, distorted by tectonic pressures. Some are torn off, like lost leaves that leave mysterious gaps. Still, those who know how to read the layers can reconstruct forgotten narratives. It's like being an archaeologist and a writer at the same time, deciphering torn passages. A fossilized grain of pollen already tells the story of the climate, the plants, the world that existed. Even a layer of cosmic dust can indicate impacts or catastrophes. This silent diary speaks, but requires attentive eyes to decipher the signals. Now, think of your own childhood diary, kept in a drawer. Some pages may be torn, stained, or angrily scratched. You know there was a story there, but you don't remember exactly what it was. The feeling is of loss and presence at the same time, almost paradoxical. Geological layers work the same way. They reveal and hide. A clear record may be followed by an intriguing and enigmatic gap. It is in these gaps that imagination lives. What was written there? If there are missing pages, we create hypotheses, theories, even fantasies to fill them. Science also works this way, bringing together evidence to bridge gaps, and each preserved piece is a clue to the gigantic puzzle. But the gaps, curiously, are what most compel us to investigate. This secret diary is not just cold geology, it is almost cosmic poetry. It retains both the banality of rain and the impact of an asteroid. In the same pile of sediment, silence and explosion coexist. The pages are written by rivers, deserts, winds, and ancient seas, and each of them shows that Earth is both author and publisher. We can't stop you from writing, but we can learn to interpret. And in the process, we discover that we are not passive readers. We also write lines in this book, sometimes without realizing it. Our trash, our pollution, our marks are already recorded chapters. A distant future may find us on a plastic or gray line, and this forces us to think about the fate of all civilizations that write too much. Human history is a stage where great empires have shone brightly. The Mayans built monumental cities, but they disappeared like smoke in the wind. Rome built roads, aqueducts, and colosseums, but collapsed under its own weight. On Easter Island, colossal statues silence a society that has collapsed. The pattern repeats itself. Resources exploited to the limit and beyond what is possible. Complex systems become fragile when they abuse what sustains them. What seemed unbeatable proves to be just a house of cards built over time. Nature demands high prices and does not grant extra time for survival. These stories are not just from the past, they are living warnings for us. Each ruin is a mirror pointed at our collective present, and each mirror returns an uncomfortable question that insists on echoing. The parallel with now is almost impossible to ignore. Just look around. We are consuming fossil fuels as if they were infinite. Tropical forests become pasture in a matter of months, with no chance of return. Rivers are polluted, oceans are saturated with plastic, air is poisoned with gases. We have created a system that depends on infinite growth on a finite planet. It's the same equation that brought down the ancients, only on a global scale. Self-destruction does not come from outside, but from the choices we insist on repeating. Past civilizations collapsed locally. We have expanded the formula. Our empire is not just Roman or Mayan, it is the entire Earth. And the more universal the reach, the greater the fallout can be. This is the shadow that accompanies our technological and cultural brilliance. But reflecting on this doesn't have to be all hopelessness or catastrophe. The mirror of the past also offers us a chance to change the script. Just as we learn from individual mistakes, we can learn collectively. It's like a driver who sees an accident ahead and slows down. We don't need to hit the same wall to believe it exists. Every civilization that has disappeared has left a lesson that cannot be ignored. Perhaps our challenge is to accept that we are vulnerable, even powerful. Awareness of this can be the first step in breaking the cycle. The problem is that the rush to grow overshadows the patience to learn. What if we are already repeating old mistakes without realizing it? Perhaps the signs are right in front of us, but we insist on not seeing them. We often look at strange artifacts and prefer to classify them as natural. Stones with unusual shapes are said to be the result of geological chance. Structures lined up in remote landscapes are treated as natural curiosities. But what if some of these findings aren't just a whim of nature? What if some are subtle signs of something we'd rather forget or ignore? Science, with its prudence, tends to look for conventional explanations first, but this prudence can sometimes snuff out questions before they blossom. It's uncomfortable to admit that we don't know enough to explain everything. And it is precisely in this discomfort that the greatest possibilities lie hidden, because what we call natural today may be an ancient echo, an echo that we have not yet had the courage to hear until the end. Think of a seemingly ordinary stone, full of regular holes on its surface. From a distance, it just looks like the effect of erosion or the water that touched it. But when you look closely, you notice symmetry, pattern, even intention in the design. How often does the rush to classify prevent us from noticing the difference? The same goes for metallic spheres, lines engraved in rocks, ambiguous fossils. These findings are like riddles. They seem natural, but they are not entirely convincing. The scientific view seeks to rule out extraordinary hypotheses before anything else. However, the extraordinary can be disguised in the banal. It's like finding an old letter used as a bookmark in another book. You almost throw it away, but you discover it contains a whole story. Sometimes the greatest treasure hides behind an ordinary cover. Everyone has had this experience on a smaller scale without realizing it right away. You find an old piece at home and think, this is nothing. After looking at it carefully, you discover that it has sentimental or historical value. The brain tries to normalize first, but the heart asks for a second look. The same thing happens with Earth. The rush to explain can mask signals. We may have stumbled upon traces of ancient civilizations, but we laughed at them, or we store them in warehouses, labeled as unimportant anomalies. What if the signs are already before us, waiting for attentive eyes? This possibility changes everything because it opens doors that we avoid opening. If we've seen it and ignored it, what else are we missing now? And will we learn our lesson before it's too late? If other civilizations really existed and disappeared, the question is straightforward. What guarantees that our destiny will be different from theirs? The answer lies not in technology or military power, but in choices. Climate change, pollution, and uncontrolled use of resources are clear signs. It's like driving at high speed, knowing the road ends in a cliff. We know the risk, but we pretend the brakes can be applied later. This collective behavior reveals something dangerous about us. We postpone decisions. We leave for tomorrow what needs to be done today until time takes its toll. And the planet does not negotiate deadlines. It only responds to the impacts it suffers. Thus, every careless action now is a line written in our future. And that line may be the last page of our own civilization. But learning is possible when we allow ourselves to look within. Think about that time when you wasted something without thinking. Maybe you threw away good food, wasted water unnecessarily. These are small gestures, but multiplied by billions, they take on another scale. It's as if each of us is a drop in a bucket. One drop weighs nothing, but together they can overflow any container. This perception can transform individual behaviors into collective ones. When we take care of the little, we give life to the much, and the whole is grateful. The lessons of the past do not call for perfection, but for awareness. The sum of conscious choices is what defines whether we resist or fall. And resisting is what gives meaning to the learning we inherit from history. It's curious how the future can be shaped by something so human: attention. If we look back and see our mistakes, we've already taken a step forward. If we look ahead and see the consequences, we give another one. And if we bring this to the present, we find the point of action. It's not about saving the world in a solitary heroic gesture, but understanding that each decision is a vote in the collective destiny. Turn off the lights, choose carefully what you consume, rethink what you discard. These choices are small in appearance, but big in impact, because the future will not be written only by the powerful or governments. It will be written by every person who has understood the lesson of deep time. And now it's up to us to decide, will we be an erased memory or an eternal memory? If deep time erases almost everything, what will you do with yours now? Are your daily choices helping to write a lasting story? Or are we just repeating mistakes that have doomed past civilizations? The big question is, do we want to be remembered as remnants or as a legacy? The answer depends less on the story and more on each action present. Look around you. How much waste, haste, and carelessness is there in your routine? Have you ever stopped to think how many times you ignore signs that call for change? Don't we do the same as those who disappeared before us? The planet gives us warnings, but we still prefer to postpone decisions, and we may not have the luxury of waiting much longer. Now I ask you, what mark do you want to leave on Earth's diary? Will your page be a trail of destruction or awareness? Share your insights in the comments, because your thoughts matter a lot. And if this video made you think, subscribe and turn on notifications, so you continue on this journey of discovery and transformative questions.